Good morning. Today is the 9th of September. We are just flying by the year. The year is just flying by. And today we have another episode of the Dear Church podcast wherein we talk about Ecclesiastes. Yeah. The wisdom is ending though, I think, because you have our words of wisdom are ending on Wednesday. So,
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Actually, summer is officially over, I think.
Yep.
So I think what I do when summer ends is I go on an immediate cut. So I get shredded for the winter.
When is daylight savings?
Daylight saving is November 3rd.
November 3rd?
Yeah.
That's when we
Fall back.
gain an hour.
Yep.
Yeah.
But do you really in the long scheme of things? Because then you lose it later on. So I feel like it just evens out, no?
Just never lose it. Don't do the other way. Just keep on just...
No, then you'll be an hour early or late. I don't know which one.
Yeah.
The NFL season has officially started. Today is Monday, and the Jets are playing the Niners today.
Why is this upside down?
I noticed that earlier during the meeting. I didn't say anything. So today we're going to be talking about the 8th chapter of Ecclesiastes, and I think just one big topic in general in the 8th chapter, and that is the fear of the Lord. And so that's what we'll be discussing. We got some Theo Vaughn coming your way. We got some David Platt coming your way. We have a lot of things to discuss on this fall Monday morning. I hope you got your PSLs ready. I hope you got your apple picking ready. Pumpkin spice latte, do you like it? Is it yay or nay, by the way?
There are so many haters of the PSL. I would say PSL's all right.
But is that because there's haters or is that just
No,
objectively?
I tried it yesterday with
Yeah.
you. Yeah, it was all right. I mean, I wouldn't get it every day.
I mean, that would be tough. Yeah.
Yeah. I heard it's just a spice they put in.
There's no
It's
sugar in there?
there's no like pumpkin in there. Right?
Oh, it's like a pumpkin spice type of
I
situation.
have no idea what it is.
What's your favorite like fall thing to do? Like, what do you like to do in the fall? Like,
I gather all these leaves.
are you an apple picker?
No.
You don't like apples?
No.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
So I hope you are enjoying your fall activity, whether you're apple picking or drinking pumpkin spice latte. We have a lot of things to talk about today. You are listening to the Dear Church podcast. Welcome to the Dear Church podcast, where we exist to fill your ears and your minds with the study of God to see the world as disciples of Christ. My name is Sam Yang, and we have with us Pastor Eugene, and I have a Pro Bass. It's Bass Pro. How come you didn't correct me? I don't know. It says it on your hat.
Yeah, I think people always say Pro Bass shirts or
Yeah.
shops. Yeah.
It's Bass Pro.
But what if it is Pro Bass and that's how they get you?
And this is a fake? So we were gifted these hats, these Bass Pro hats from our good friend Christine, who's at the Sing conference this past week. And so shout out to Christine, who'll never hear this. So today, Pastor Eugene, we have a lot of things on the docket, as they say. And I wanted to continue on in our series on Ecclesiastes and continue to ask you questions, maybe a little bit more broad. So this will be our little devotional of the day, one can say. So we'll start with chapter 8. So I'll read, this is Ecclesiastes chapter 8. Who is like the wise, and who knows the interpretation of a thing? A man's wisdom makes his face shine, and the hardness of his face is changed. I say, keep the king's command because of God's oath to him. Be not hasty to go from his presence. Do not take your stand in an evil cause, for he does whatever he pleases. For the word of the king is supreme, and who may say to him, what are you doing? Whoever keeps a command will know no evil thing, and the wise heart will know the proper time and the just way. For there is a time and a way for everything, although man's trouble lies heavy on him. For he does not know what he is to be, for who can tell him how it will be? No man has power to retain the spirit or power over the day of death. There is no discharge from war, nor will wickedness deliver those who are given to it. All this I observed while applying my heart to all that is done under the sun when man had power over man to his hurt. Then I saw the wicked buried. They used to go in and out of the holy place and were praised in the city where they had done such things. This also is vanity. Because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed speedily, the heart of the children of man is fully set to do evil. Though a sinner does evil 100 times and prolongs his life, yet I know that it will be well with those who fear God, because they fear before him. But it will not be well with the wicked, neither will he prolong his days like a shadow, because he does not fear before God. There is vanity that takes place on earth, that there are righteous people to whom it happens according to the deeds of the wicked, and there are wicked people to whom it happens according to the deeds of the righteous. I said that this also is vanity. And I command joy, for man has nothing better under the sun, but to eat and drink and be joyful, for this will go with him in his toil through the days of his life that God has given him under the sun. When I applied my heart to know wisdom, and to see the business that is done on earth, how neither day nor night do one's eyes see sleep, then I saw the work of God, that man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun. However much man may toil in seeking, he will not find it out, even though a wise man claims to know, he cannot find it out. This is Ecclesiastes. That's a little tongue twister there at the end. But for this chapter, I wanted to focus on the section of verses 10 to 13. And, the fear of the Lord is a big topic, especially as we know the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And so, I'm sure this is something that we should take heed. Take heed. To heed. We should heed it.
Headed.
Headed
it.
So we should take heed of the fear of the Lord. But I think oftentimes, and we discussed this before, there are a lot of misunderstandings of what the fear of the Lord actually is. A lot of times people will talk about, you fear God like you fear your dad. It's like a deep reverence. And that's how you are to fear the Lord. But, and I was thinking about this today too. On Fridays, our staff has our meeting, and we're recording this on Friday, September the 6th. And in our meeting today, we read Joshua chapter 2. And in Joshua chapter 2, we read of Rahab. And it was her fear that led to act in the way that she did, protecting God's people, protecting the spies of Israel. And so fear doesn't necessarily seem like it's simply a deep reverence or a fear that you have of your dad, because I don't think that was the fear that she had towards God, nor the people of Jericho had towards God. And so what does it mean to fear the Lord? Because it does seem like in this passage that we read this morning, fear is the key. Because they fear before him. That's verse 12. Fear is the key. So what does it mean to correctly fear God as a Christian?
Yeah. Let's take it in context of the chapter. So when you look at verse 1, who knows the interpretation of a thing, right?
Yeah.
And then you continue to go on, and then you go to verse 14, and how you just don't know. Mm-hmm. Let's say in verse 17, then I saw all the work of God, that man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun. You just don't know everything.
Yeah.
So if you put that in context, and to top it off, since you've read it, let's just do it really quickly. Verse 8, eventually I get to the fear, okay?
Yeah.
But verse 8, it says, no man has power to retain the spirit or power over the day of death. There is no discharge from war, nor will wickedness deliver those who are given to it. These are 4 things that a king should understand. 4 things that you don't have power over. But the reason why Solomon is saying is probably because those that are in power believe they have such power, or they have power over such things. So no man has the power to retain the spirit. It's kind of obvious what that means. You cannot confine the spirit of a man. Same thing, power over the day of death. Everybody believes that if you're in power, you could have control over the day of death, especially other people's death. And so we see like lots of despots, terrible tyrants who would kill millions of people because they believed they had control over death. But here we are shown that you don't have the power of the day over the day of death. And that's especially true when it comes to your own. And that's why people, even though they would be suicidal, one of the temptations that they have when they're suicidal, rather, is that they believe if they can control this one thing, it's the power over death. Mm-hmm. So in that hubris, they want to rebel against God, kill themselves. And I'm not saying all suicidal people think like that, but I'm saying one of the things that I hear a lot from people who were suicidal would say things like that. And so the power over the day of death is not what you have. This is what the Bible clearly states. There's no discharge from war. War does not relieve anything. War doesn't actually make you better once war is over. If we look at even the current world wars, are we necessarily better off? And people have debated that. Aren't we better off in some ways and worse off in some other ways? And so there isn't an overall relief just because you go to war. It might be necessary, just like we talked about in the just war theory, but it doesn't mean it'll give you a discharge. Finally, wickedness will not deliver those that are given to it. You can say, I need deliverance and I will use this wicked ends or wicked means to achieve an end, but it will not deliver you from it. All that to say, from what we said from verse 1 to verse 17 to then verse 8, you don't know. And because you don't know how to work out everything or even anything, because you don't know what should guide you, what should be guiding your compass, it should be the fear of God. And when you say, well, it's not like the reverent fear that you have for your father, is it really then like a fear that you would have as a little kid to your dad because he's going to discipline you? And I would say, yeah, a lot of times, some of the things that we've missed in our evangelical circles is it's about love. God is love, which is absolutely true. And love casts out fear, which is also true. And wrong context, though, if it's not talking about the fear of God, obviously. And so what are we talking about here is when you don't know a certain thing, and you won't know a lot of things. We could always go to hypotheticals. When we talk about Rahab, we could go to talk about Nazis and hiding Jews in your basement. We always go to these hypotheticals. But what about now, today? There are so many things that you have to have an answer for that you might not know the answer to. And so how do you direct your footsteps? How do you direct your thoughts? How do you come up with decisions? You know, what if it is you need to go to another church or another denomination? How should your thoughts and directions be situated or pointed toward? And if you don't know the answer exactly, because you don't know the answer exactly, it's saying it should be the fear of God. The fear of God. So yes, it is the fear of God where you definitely don't want to do wrong, where you know you would have God upset. So that should direct your footsteps, because you're like, this is not it, because this is something God definitely hates. You don't do that thing, right? And the fear of God also meaning I want to give him reverence, because he's such a fearsome God. He actually knows the answer and I don't. So I humbly present myself before him when I make these decisions. And if I have to make a decision and I don't know, the fear of God in that direction would be, I still submit myself to you in every way as I make these decisions. What I don't get, though, is when people are so sure about the answer that they're like, this is absolutely the way. And I preached about it 2 Sundays ago, but they believe it's absolutely the answer when it comes to a certain topic or a certain thing or a certain ministry. And to give you a prime example of what we've been facing is when I went through small group changes, what I have found is initially people would come up with these absolute statements. People are not going to be happy. That's an absolute statement. This is a false statement, obviously, because some people were happy. What our church learned from leaders down to, the regular member is, maybe I don't know the absolute answer to this. So maybe if I present it, whether it's for additional information for me to have, it will be done more humbly. It will be done in a manner where it is like, well, here's another dimension that you might want to look at, rather than this is absolutely bad or this is absolutely good.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know. You don't know. So when people ask, they would be very respectful, which I in turn would reciprocate that respect. They had questions like, well, what is your motivation behind this? Why did you want to change this? Did you think about this? Or did you think about how it could potentially affect this group of people or these people, here? And I would say, that's a good point. Either I would say, yes, I have, or no, I haven't. Thank you for bringing that up to me. But what change brings about, though, and that's what we all go through. What change brings about, ultimately, your initial reaction is, do you have the fear of God in you? Because if you have the fear of God in you, then you have at least those two dimensions working, meaning I definitely don't want to anger the Lord. So you wouldn't do anything that would anger God. And number two, the way you would move forward is in reverence to the Lord, because he is holy, he is majestic, he's all powerful, he is all knowing. And you want to make sure that you submit yourself into his lordship when you act.
So the attitude that I see a lot actually amongst Christians today is that first part of fear is not there because we know the gospel. And I think one of the things that I've seen is because we know that we are saved, because we know that no matter what we do today, if we have salvation in Christ, we are saved. And so because of that, there is no fear of God. Sure, we may revere God and respect God, but there is no fear, trembling of God, because we know, like, you know what, so what if I do this? God's going to forgive me because I believe in Jesus. And I know that's, obviously the wrong way of looking at it. And Paul says that, right? Just because we're forgiven, we don't say, oh, I'm just going to do the worst things that I can. But I guess, how do we think through that? Because I think that's the attitude that a lot of people have. It's, I can mess up. It's okay. I'm not going to anger God, because when God sees me, he sees Christ, which is true, but we abuse it to the point where we have no fear of God.
I mean, that is something that I believe God has in his calculations. He knew that this would be a possibility, and yet at the same time, he still does it. And so there are some things that you would always have to consider, especially when it comes to the word fear, right? Let's say, look at the Hebrew word for fear, yare, right? That actually means awe, reverence, and it means quaking in your boots. It means both those things. We've separated, meaning when I'm reverent towards somebody, there is no fear when I'm reverent. But then why is that the case? Is that true reverence? Is that true reverence? Or is it just maybe, I don't know, maybe you're just a fan. You're just a fan of God. You know how people have fans?
Yeah.
And they mistake that with reverence.
Yeah.
You're just a fan. But then what happens if you're a fan and you're not reverent? If you're just a fan who's going with the crowd, you're like one of the disciples, because once you hear something that you don't like, you'll be sad or you'll be mad, but you'll go away.
Yeah.
So there are portions in the gospel where it says, after Jesus said that, a lot of the disciples left him because they're not his disciples. They were a fan. Maybe they liked his food. Maybe they liked his teaching. Maybe they liked that he was bringing in something new, and this was like a movement they could ride. I could ride this wave. Let's go. That kind of thing. Yeah. Same thing with a church too. Maybe people are in a church because they want to ride the wave, and we're like, oh, we're reformed. We got to go reform. But as soon as something that you don't like happens, you get off the wave. You hate it. That's not reverence. That's not awe of God. That is a fandom. That is something that you're just liking for the time being. But as soon as it goes against your own will, then you'll leave. You're not a real disciple. So the fear of God has to be both reverence and quaking or shaking in your boots. But even the fact that I have to say this means I am kind of separating, which is also false. They're the same thing. So when I fear God, there is an awe because he's so fearsome. How about that? Yeah. So we should think of it like that. So should we be quaking in our boots when we think about when we think about the Lord and his ways, oh, absolutely. I think absolutely. His ways are so beyond our ways. We can't even fathom to come up with an answer of these impossible, quote unquote, impossible situations. And we come up with these hypotheticals. This is something that I hate these days that's been coming up in social media, that all these pastors and all these, so-called pastors are saying things like, I think Mark Driscoll tweeted out the other day, if Jesus were here today, he would vote. You have no idea what Jesus would do if he was here today.
Yeah.
You are not Jesus.
Right.
You know generally and broadly that he would not sin, right? But if you're saying he would do this or that,
Right.
That's why there's this clip in Protestia, I think was the X handle, about this woman, quote unquote, pastor, who would say if Jesus was alive today, he would hold my hand during my abortion or something to that effect.
Oh, man.
And you have no idea.
That's tough.
Yeah, when people are saying if Jesus were alive today, he would do blankety blank, you have no idea.
Yeah.
And so to put Jesus in that kind of box is heretical. I would not want to say, and I would have no idea what God would do. I would think that maybe he might do something like this, but that's not the point. The point isn't what would Jesus do. Again, we have always tried to say that what would Jesus do is killed us as an evangelical culture. It's what did Jesus do that has always mattered. What did Jesus do? Not what would Jesus do. And so what did Jesus do is what matters. And what Jesus did affects what we do today.
So, I think kind of like how you were saying the WWJD movement, I think the whole Jesus is my best friend, homeboy movement has also harmed the church greatly. I think they were trying to make God more maybe appealing to somebody that grew up with really strong and negative authoritative figures in their lives. They wanted to make God more approachable, maybe more friendly. And I think perhaps that's why they have this Jesus is my best friend, he's my homeboy type of situation. But the thing is, I think with that, even if we don't subscribe to it, because a lot of us have been exposed to that kind of language and those kind of sermons maybe growing up, we don't have a healthy fear of the Lord. So what would be, I guess, your prayer? What would be your thoughts towards a Christian? Let's just say I have a Christian friend who doesn't fear God, or his life and his words don't look like he fears God. How do you handle this type of situation? Because if you're a Christian, surely you should, because all men should fear God.
Yeah. I would say continue to read the Bible. I think people who don't fear God, it's been a while since they've read the Word. And so you got to continue to read the Bible. You got to continue to meditate on the Bible. Read the epistles, read what even Peter writes to the readers of his letter. And, read about James, how you have to have fruit if you are a Christian. It's just what comes after being a Christian. You have fruit. It's just the way it is. And if you don't, I guess you're not a Christian. Read about what Jesus says. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will be with him in the kingdom of heaven. It's just all over the Bible. It's something where we have to know, sometimes you have to tread carefully. And when you don't tread carefully and you're unwise like that, maybe you don't know the real situation that you're in. When you deal with members in our church, tread carefully.
That's Matthew 10, right? I'm working on my identification. I think it's Matthew 10.
Why don't you find it? But I say when you talk to another elder or a pastor, tread carefully. That kind of thing. When you talk to a precious child in God, you tread more carefully than you should, because you don't unnecessarily burden or have them break their conscience. Things like that, what we went over in Romans 14.
Yeah. It's not Matthew 10.
I don't know where you got that actually.
I got it from, so everyone who acknowledges me before men, I'll also acknowledge before my Father who's in heaven. Dang it. Anyway, that's not Matthew 10. I think that's helpful for us because I would say a big chunk of our listenership, or I guess the people that are listening or watching this podcast have been Christians for a long time. I know a big chunk are. And I think when we have been Christians for a long time, it takes away from the fear of the Lord at times. And so I just wanted to just kind of talk about this because I think this is a helpful reminder for us that have been Christians for a long time that we are to fear the Lord. Jesus is not your best friend. He's your Lord. And I think that's something that we have to continue to think about. And yeah, I mean, I think the stuff that we see is countless, just kind of the disregard and even irreverence that Christians have towards Christ. And so I think this is just an important topic for us to talk about.
Yeah, you said something that was interesting. You said it has harmed the church when we said Jesus is our best friend.
Yeah.
If that were possible to do, that would be something that the apostle would write, right? If it were possible, like Apostle John, they would lead them astray. Peter writes, they stumble. This is 1 Peter chapter 2. They stumble because they disobey the word. And then he says, as they were destined to do so. So when you don't fear God, maybe you're just not a Christian.
Yep.
I mean, that's something that we always have to consider. If I don't fear God, maybe I'm not a Christian. And maybe if you start thinking like that, that's how a Christian ought to think. Because if you didn't even have that secondary thought, nothing's going to get you back in line, meaning nothing's going to continue to propel you to follow or adhere to the word of God. Nothing's going to make you a saint or sanctified. So you're not a Christian then. So at least have those thoughts.
So I guess my question is, if you were to listen to this, right, and you ask yourself, do I fear God? And you say, well, I fear that he might take something away. I fear that he might take my house away. I fear that he might take my wife, or I fear that he might take my job away. So because I know he has the power to do that. So yes, I fear God. Is that a correct fear though? Like just to think, oh, I fear God because he could make my life not as good as I want it to be, or because I know that he can take away things? Is that just the sole reason why we fear God?
I think it is something that you can consider. Definitely if you're younger in the faith. If you're younger in the faith and you know that discipline is coming, just like you're a kid, it's okay. If I don't fully understand something, but I know that this angers God, and I don't do it out of fear of his discipline, that's good. I like that. Sometimes I don't understand, but I know that I shouldn't. Your child doesn't understand everything right now. She doesn't understand why you asked her to do this and not that. Let's say, for instance, eating habits. You're saying, Adeline, you can't do this. You can't spit your food back out, because I remember you told me she did that, right? She would spit her food back out or something like that?
Yeah, she still does, yeah.
Well, let's say when she does, you discipline her, but she doesn't understand why.
Yeah.
So she doesn't understand that spitting out food is not only wasteful, it's bad because she's not getting nutrients. It's wasteful in the sense where, you're wasting not just the food, but the mom or dad's preparation is disrespectful. There's all these things.
Right,
but if you
right.
sat her down as a 1-year-old and you told her, that's not going to take. But how do you get her to stop? You discipline her. So she doesn't understand, but she knows that she should be scared of your discipline, so she won't do it. As she grows on later, she'll understand, this is why I shouldn't spit out food when I eat it. And as an adult, you don't do that. You don't get that discipline now. As an adult, you might not even understand it. So sometimes the discipline comes first. And that's fine with me. To me, I'm fine with that. Because if I understand this is wrong, and I understand that discipline will come if I do this, then I'm okay with at least not doing what's wrong, and then the understanding come later. Even if the understanding never came, though, is that okay? Maybe a different question.
Because isn't the purpose of discipline, I mean, even if we consider church discipline, isn't the purpose of church discipline repentance? Right.
Yeah, but then also it's a teaching mechanism. So when an elder sins, then you just bring them straight up to the session. There's
Yeah.
no deliberation. You bring them to the session, and then you bring them to the members of the church, and then that person gets disciplined. An elder is held to a higher standard. Why? Because he's there to be a model of teaching. So even in a sin, you teach the congregation. So discipline is also a teaching method for other people to watch.
Do you think, and I know that different lead pastors, different head pastors may have differing views on this. Do you think an elder that is disciplined, just period, can ever come back and be an active member of the session?
I think it depends.
I mean, so I know it depends on what the issue was or what the problem was, but I'm just curious because,
I think there are some things you can't come back from.
oh yeah, for sure.
You can be forgiven,
Oh,
but
yeah.
not a leader.
Right. There's no need for you to come back to the session if you know you're still a believer. But
But that's me. I mean, other denominations have drawn that line. So,
yeah,
for instance, I don't think adultery is something that you could come back from. But many denominations will say that adultery is something that you can come back
yeah,
from.
yeah.
As a leader, I'm not saying as a member. As a member,
Right.
if someone is repentant, a murderer, an adulterer,
Right.
A thief, all those people should come back to God. As a leader, however, I don't
Tough.
think so.
Well, there's no
Right.
reason.
Now, what if you were a former adulterer, former murderer? Could you be a leader? I think yes, because Paul was. Okay? So I think yes. So before you were a Christian, you were all these things, and then you became saved. Yes, you can be. But it doesn't mean that they're not vetted. It doesn't mean that they don't have, guards in place, like rail guards in place to make sure. It doesn't mean that we, forego any of those things, but it does mean that we understand that once you're in a place of leadership, you're in a place where you're a model for people to look at. And so you cannot do certain things. Some of them are more egregious than others, okay? You could even say things like stealing. If you stole money as a pastor, so there's a lot of scandal around that, where pastors would steal money from the church.
Yeah,
I don't even know how that happens, though, but it apparently happens.
it's tough.
Can they come back? And the answer is it depends. It depends on, is it simply thievery that they were accused of? Because usually it isn't. Usually they didn't just steal, but they lied. They covered up. They went beyond just the simple thieving, and they would create ministries to be these holes where money would be poured in, but it would go to the pastor or something like that.
Yeah.
And so it's more than that then, And so a lot of times it's not just one sin. So same thing with adultery. If it's just a one-time thing and it was a mistake, perhaps there can be redemption where even a leader will go back. Maybe I'm wrong. Perhaps there can be a time. It was just a one-time, all of a sudden you were drugged, I don't know, and then this adultery happened, so you get restored. That could happen.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Yeah.
But usually that's not it. Usually it's a long relationship, and they've been lying behind people's backs. They've been lying to the church. They've been lying to their family. They've been doing all these things, and that's a bad thing, is my point. So sin usually doesn't stand alone. And it doesn't stand alone because we go away more and more from the fear of God. The fear of God would say, if you did this one thing back, you would run back praying and asking for forgiveness, if that were the case.
Gotcha. How do we get here?
Fear of God.
So speaking of the fear of God, I wanted to go into some application in how we do this, because some of us may have questions on, how do we do this day to day? So how do we eat? How do we work? How do we work out? How do we watch TV in the fear of the Lord? How does that even make sense? Because when we think of fear, we think like, oh, we're just looking behind our back or something like that. But that's obviously not the case. So how do we live day-to-day lives, working, studying, eating, working out, whatever it might be? How do we do that fearing the Lord? And how do we do that in a way that's pleasing to God?
Yeah, I would say in addition to adhering to the Word of God, I would say stay close with a communion of saints. So have brothers and sisters that will continue to encourage you, continue to propel you to do good, stay away from evil and deceit and lies. When you don't have that kind of accountability, it's rough. I'm not just talking about Christian friends. I'm talking about a church. So people confuse the two. The church has an umbrella of authority that God has already designed. So there's discipline in place. Your group of friends do not, even if they are Christians. So your group of friends could be Christians. It matters not, is my point. My point is you need a church. So you need people above you, below you, on the same level as your faith, speaking to you, you speaking to them, but under the discipline and authority that the Lord has commandeered, the Lord has set up and put into place, and what He started basically. So I would say that's number 2. Make sure that that's in there. So if it's not in there, that's a problem. I think you will run into problems. And I will even go as far as to say, even if they are Christian brothers and sisters, it is not enough. You need a church. You need a fellowship of believers. And if you're saying your church, a fellowship of believers, does not have this in place for you, then I would say, well, you always have the option of leaving, which I wouldn't necessarily suggest or recommend, but that's always there. So there is no excuse for you. But the more bigger point to that is there is a way. There always is a way. If you're in with a group of believers inside a church, there is someone that's always there that can encourage you, exhort you, admonish you, that can propel you to the faith. Maybe not in the way that you want, but perhaps in the way that you need. And so that's something to always keep in mind when you're in the church. Make sure that you humble yourself. Now, people that I know will not humble themselves because they think a church should be this certain way when it comes to some kind of ministry, architecture, the way something is set up. I don't like this, I don't like that. So there's no submission on their part. And that's a rough life to live, because you will never find a church that is perfectly in tune with the way you think ministry should be done. That's kind of isn't that kind of prideful to think that, though? What an audacious claim to say that you know what it's like, or you know what it is to have a good ministry layout, and no one else does, or yours is superior. So when I hear people give me suggestions, and people give me suggestions a lot, I listen more to their heart. What kind of heart does this person? It could be great ideas. I think that's secondary, though. I think it's the heart that's more important. So when you give ideas, if your heart's not there, it could be great ideas, but it will still harm you because it wasn't done with a good heart. And when you hear people talk from that place, it's a very sad place, because what you're witnessing is a breakdown of this person's spirit. This person is breaking down in front of you, and you just pray for that soul. Because without the heart of gratitude, what do you have? A heart of bitterness.
So I think the difficulty that someone may have, though, is being a part of a church is auction. I don't know what word I just said.
Auction.
Auxiliary. Being a part of a church is obviously very, very important, and it's necessary. But they don't live with me. They don't live with me 24 hours a day. They're not there when I eat lunch at work. They're not there when I watch TV at night. They're not with me. Maybe we have weekday meetings, like a Wednesday smaller group or something like that, but they're not really with me all the time. And if I'm supposed to fear God, how am I supposed to do that by myself? They don't text me all the time. Like, there's many times where if you're single, you are by yourself. And so how do you fear God in your aloneness, by yourself? How do you fear God when you don't have somebody next to you that's keeping you accountable because they're at home?
Even if someone was in your house, there are times when you're alone. So we'll
In the
take that
bathroom?
extreme example. Yeah, I mean, maybe they're out. Angela's not home all the time when you're home, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I thought you meant like bathroom or something.
But that's why the Shema's there.
Deuteronomy 6.
Yeah, the Shema is there for you to understand what should always be with you.
So this is Deuteronomy 6, verses 4 to 9. It reads, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, when you lie down, when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates.
Yeah, so I think it's one of those things where I think memorizing the word is so important. Making sure that you have it in your heart. You know, we literally have the Bible at our fingertips now, 24/7 access. And we may be the most
Illiterate.
biblically illiterate generation.
Yeah.
This is what Daryl Harrison's big concern was when I was talking with him. We're getting him, by the way.
He's coming, yeah.
He's coming. He's coming to us next June.
I think
pretty
with
exciting.
Virgil.
With Virgil, right?
We're going to have a little podcast, a little mishmash.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. They might be too big by then. to do a podcast
I might be
with
too
us.
big by then. I'm just kidding. So if I can just kind of summarize what we talked about today, the fear of the Lord obviously is of the highest importance. And we fear the Lord by loving and obeying him.
Yeah, this is why I'm not afraid of depictions of art. I'm not afraid of watching certain movies. I can get disgusted when it's, when something is grotesque or they just overindulge in some sort of sinful activity. Yeah, it's like gratuitous and, let's say, overly gratuitous in certain aspects of things that are not holy. I don't like that stuff. I don't necessarily enjoy it, but I can still enjoy pieces of art that may not be perfect because they depict reality or what we are. And we had a short conversation on this with the staff with 2CV, Second Commandment violations.
Yep.
And I tested all of you guys, but, everyone failed. It's unfortunate.
I thought I passed brilliantly.
How'd you pass?
It's in my mind.
Would you have a picture of Jesus in your house?
No.
What if your mom and dad were like, this is my last request that you hold this picture?
That would be a weird. I'd say this is a weird request, ma'am or sir.
You would say no to them as a dying request.
Yeah.
Wow.
Is that weird? Is that weird of me to say?
No. But my point was, what I challenged you guys was, if that were really the case, then every nativity scene you would drive by, you would upturn that nativity scene. You would take that manger and just flip it upside down. It's like, how dare you try to depict my Lord Jesus?
No, only if the
As a
baby's face was not pointed towards me. That's what I'm.
You're taking Pastor Paul's stance. As long as I don't see the face, it's cool. Yeah. But it's one of those things where, I just think that if it's a depiction of art, I can understand where we're coming from. I actually love Balthazar's painting from
The bakery.
From Rembrandt.
Oh, Rembrandt. I know him.
Yeah, Mene Tekel Parson, right? That's the line. And then you see that being written out, and then Balthazar is like going nuts with what's going on. The hand is depicted, and then to the 2CV enthusiasts, they wouldn't even like Rembrandt. That's a rough one for me. And so maybe I am too much like R.C. Sproul here, but I don't know exactly what R.C. Sproul would say, but I don't think he would have a problem with it. But when you're too much into something, sometimes I wonder, is it the fear of God? Fear of God in what way? And so watching TV, do you fear God in what way? Does it have to be perfect? You're like, God is perfect, so I must watch everything that's perfect. And so you're always just upset and angry. You can't be happy about anything. That's a rough life to live.
But you wouldn't watch something that was overly that way. So, for example, Game of Thrones, like you wouldn't be watching stuff where it's like explicitly for that purpose being, like it's broadcasted to celebrate the sin.
So I personally didn't watch Game of Thrones, and I personally would not watch The Chosen.
What's that?
The Chosen?
Oh, that's when they go to a different planet.
No. It's a Jesus show. It takes everything that hasn't been in the Bible, and they have this. They use like their theological imagination to fill in the gaps.
Oh yeah, we talked about it like a month ago. 2 months
and
ago.
Jesus would say these things, and you're like, no, he wouldn't. Things like that. But yeah, I mean, is it any wonder that they have pride flags on their sets, and then they kind of scold you for being so, legalistic if you don't like it, if you don't approve. Anyway, so we're in a world of utter confusion. We don't know what's left and right anymore. We don't know what's up and down. So for me, people have just no discernment. Hopefully, the podcast helps with that. But what we want to share ultimately is the standard is the Word of God. You go with the Word of God, and if your conscience bears on you not to do certain things, then don't do it.
Yeah.
And along the way, you will be continually growing, being more sanctified, maturing. And you won't necessarily think like you did 10 years ago when you were a baby Christian, let's say. And you will mature in your thinking, but the standard still has to be there. If you really want to understand the fear of God, then read the Word, go with your conscience, and then learn. And submit yourself to the Word of God. And when you do that, I think you'll be better off, way better off than where everyone else is today.
What if we have trouble reading the Word? Like, we don't want to. No, but seriously though, I think there's a lot of people that just don't want to.
Yeah, they just have other priorities.
Or they're like, I'm too busy. I don't have
other
time
priorities.
For this.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I mean, it's always like start small. That's how I always have been recommending it to people. Start small.
Yeah.
Do a verse. Meditate on the verse. Maybe you're a deep thinker. Some people.
Thank you.
Some people like read broad, like could read a large swath and not think twice about it. It doesn't give them a problem. Some people can't do that. Some people are like reading 2 chapters and like, this is too much. I can't do it. Maybe they're the ones that just need to think about a verse all day and all night. I don't know. But the point is you got to read something. So take a verse, meditate on it, memorize it, One of my favorite Psalms to memorize is the most popular Psalm. Perhaps it's popular for a reason, because it's easy to memorize and it applies to almost every walk of life. Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want, or I shall not want, And so you continue to memorize that. You go all the way to the end where surely goodness and love or goodness and peace will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And so those are things that you go from beginning to end, and then you have the middle, where even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows, right? And so you have that beginning. You lead me besides still waters, or green. You lead me to green pastures, still waters. You lead me in paths of righteousness for your name's sake. You have all these things that are in there that you can continue to think about. I would say memorize a short psalm.
Yeah.
Memorize a verse in the Bible. Start with, if you're like, Genesis 1:1, right? Great. I wouldn't even laugh at that.
Yeah.
Memorize Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then think about that. Think about it deeply. Meditate on it. And then see where that would lead your next step. If God, in the beginning, created the heavens and the earth, how does this direct my step today? And so you think about that. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's, the length of what you read. Some people are good with that. Some people can read like 5, 10, 20 chapters a day and not blink an eye. But I would say just because you do that doesn't make you holier. And just because you could only read 1 chapter a day or even a few verses a day doesn't make you less holier. The point is the Word of God. So take it upon yourself Not to say I need to go up to the standard of reading 20 chapters a day. Take it upon yourself just to read and then grow in that reading. Well, even if you think about the kings in the Old Testament, they were required to have someone like a scribe or someone with them always have the word of God on hand. So when they would need something, they were like, what did the word of God say about this situation that I'm in? So a king could always refer back to the word of God. We actually have that. We have the internet now. It's crazy. We had the access that kings would have had. Not only do we have the Bible on hand, we could just literally look up a reference like we've been doing. Oh, what about Matthew 10 was so special? And you could just literally Google or do a search on it. And we have that access. So take advantage of that access. Know that kings would have longed to have that access back in the day, but you have it today.
Thank you. I hope this is helpful. I think a lot of times people, more often than not, have trouble with these things. And we would consider these things to be basics of the faith, right? Reading the word, fearing God. But I think this is something that a lot of people have trouble with. So I hope this is a good reminder for us.
Yeah, we still have our Bible reading plan. So if you want to join in, just start from today.
It's hefty, though.
Start from today and read what you can.
Yeah.
And the next day, do the next days.
Yeah.
Read what you can. If you could do it all, that's great.
Yeah.
If you could do more, even better. But I just don't want us to be in a place where we think that the standard is, 7-8 chapters a day. And if you do it, you're a good person.
Yeah.
That's not the standard. The standard is not reading 7-8 chapters a day. And it's all subjective. Brian just made that up. So now you're on Brian's standard of reading the Bible, not any old godly standard, right?
I thought Brian was following a schedule.
No, he just plugged it in. He plugged in what he wanted, and they spit out a schedule for him. But
So he's a holy guy, I guess.
This is a Brian standard. So if you've been doing the Brian
Holier
Brian
than thou.
reading, yeah, we should have just called it the Brian reading instead of the Bible reading.
That's the B.
Did this together in 201.
Anyway, thank you for that, Pastor Eugene. Should we eat lunch now?
Yeah.
Okay. Bye. We had to take a quick lunch break because the material was just getting like the next material is going to be too hot. Q&A.
We need a beat.
What you got in the bag? What you got in the bag?
I mean, that's the thing, and that's what. Or come back to the. It wasn't Cheez-Its, it was goldfish for our kids. But
I want to hear that. Help me to really understand what you said.
Okay, we were studying James. We came out on budget season. We looked at our budget. And we said, do we really believe like what we're saying we believe? Our budget does not reflect the picture we're seeing in James. And so we just said, all right, let's take a year. And for this year, let's cut everywhere we possibly can and free up as much as we can for gospel partnerships we have in inner city Birmingham, and we focused on India. 41% of the world's poor in one country, 600 million people in northern India, less than 1% evangelical Christians. So, all right, we're gonna free up as much as possible. And so our staff went through, and during budget time, our worship staff cut 83% of their budget, which shows we had a little fluff to deal with anyway. So we cut 83% there, and all the way down to the preschool ladies saying, we don't have to have this whole assortment of snacks for our kids. Like we can do without some of these things that we're providing every week.
Well, I respect that process.
And it was a great process. It was a very sanctifying process.
So this video I thought was really interesting. It's from 2011, and it's a 5-minute video, but we're gonna cut it into a little edible size. And it's a conversation between David Platt and Mark Driscoll and James McDonald, who I think was another pastor, talking about pretty much budgeting, church budgeting. And they cut a certain budget at David Platt's church to give to missions. And they were kind of giving him grief about it because, the whole joke is like, how could you cut goldfish from the children's ministry and just give that to missions? How can you do that? And it made me think, there are churches in our area that have, I think it was called like the 50-50 rule, where 50% of your offering that you receive goes to the church and 50% goes out. 50% in, 50% out. And the whole purpose is to support global missions. And I was wondering, is that how a church should spend their finances? How should a church spend finances? Because I would like to think that the way that a church spends their finances shows you the priority of their church. So how should a church spend their finances? And more importantly, what are the priorities of a church?
Yeah, this was I forgot what it was called. What was this called? Elephant Room.
What does that mean?
A bunch of evangelical leaders that are not necessarily on the same page about a lot of stuff, and they just discuss the topic.
Oh,
Right, that's what it is. And it's more like a debate.
called Elephant Room?
Yeah, so you actually had Reformed people, and you had charismatic people.
Gotcha.
And you had like Reformed charismatics and all that stuff. What's interesting is the video that you just saw were from 3 people that are either embroiled in scandal or have been caught in scandal or have been disciplined.
Yep.
So that's interesting.
What's David Platt's scandal?
There's like a whole movie coming out for him.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's coming out soon.
There was like a whole division in his church and shot like silence on elders, so the elders like sued him.
Yeah, it's a movie coming out.
Oh, man.
You could watch that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, these 3 pastors disagree on how a church should spend finances. And I'm not saying our model is going to be the best of all time, the GOAT, or anything like that, but maybe just a discussion on what a church should focus on. Should our 50% of our focus be on global missions? Should it not? Like, how do we where do we even get that from the Bible?
Well, I think this became semi-viral because of the scandal that, David Platt is embroiled in right now with church finances and how he handles not just church finances, but how he handled dissent in his church, where people, if they disagreed and they were going to vote against it, then all of a sudden they would be walking into vote and then they wouldn't be a member or something like that. And so all that stuff has been recorded and is coming out now in some kind of documentary / movie. But these are people that have been frustrated for a long time. But I think it stems from this 2011 video was kind of indicative of how he thought the church should function. And that is, everything is a zero-sum game. If you give to this, you can't give to this. If you want this, that means something else has to suffer. And so he has this zero-sum mentality in all things. Obviously, some things are zero-sum. So some things are zero-sum, meaning like, if you marry Angela, no one else can marry Angela. That's a zero-sum. Does that make sense? You can't. There's no pie to split there, and there's no infiniteness of this kind of resource. But when it comes to, let's say, providing for your children's ministry, what David Platt did and what you saw in the video was he decided he's going to cut everything that he can so that he could give to global missions. So that's why they're talking about why would you cut Cheez-Its from your children's ministry? I disagree with that. And I think those other 2 men had a point in this, even though, again, all 3 are either embroiled in scandal or have already been, proven to have a scandal or have been disciplined by the church. But when it comes to money, I think a lot of people just see it as simply a zero-sum game. So if we have this amount, this is our pie, and if we want to give, let's say, 50% to missions, that means other people are going to get cut, which is, I think the nominal way of thinking, the normal way of thinking about budget. And what what the other 2 pastors at the time were challenging David Platt was on, you don't have to cut the Cheez-Its from the kids to give to global missions.
Yep.
You could do both, and it's not a bad thing. Just because you cut Cheez-Its doesn't necessarily mean your global missions will be any better because you gave them $5 more or something to that effect. And so the zero-sum game, when taken to the extreme, is this emotional manipulation that people are going to use to say, you need to do this so that this can happen. If you don't do this, people will die. That's the emotional manipulation that we see here. Just not just in the church or on this clip, but in the world in general at large. It's, you need to do this or people will die. And when people say that, people automatically will be like, oh, we'll be given into that. I don't want people to die. So yeah, I'm gonna definitely do that. One classic example was you should give to this global hunger fund. And it's just for a price of a cup of coffee a day, you can save this kid's life.
Yep.
And what are you going to do then? And I think Key and Peele did a really great sketch on this. And they had the sketch where I think it was Jordan Peele who was holding a little pad, right? And he had his paper with him, and his partner, Michael Keegan Keys, right, would come out. And he's like, "Sir, do you have a moment? Can I have a moment? I'm kind of busy. Do you have a moment of a time? Just 1 minute." All right, fine. Here's a minute. For just $1, you could save a kid. Would you like to donate $1? I say, all right, fine. I don't have change, but here's like $6 or $5, something like that. And then Jordan Peele will scream, "All right, bring the van!" And then a van would come out, and 6 kids would come out of the van. And they's like, "Not you!" The 7th kid tried to come out and shove the 7th kid back in.
Yeah.
And then Michael Keegan Keys is like, wait, I think I have money somewhere. But they're making fun of that kind of emotional manipulation that we have been subjected to, not by just the media outside when we say, for just a cup of coffee, you could save this kid's life, but even in the church, you give up your goldfish, you could save this kid's life. Just $5 more could be one more person that could have a life. And so people are moved by this, and then what ends up happening is people are like, where's the lie? Where's the lie? But what happens though is because this continues to manipulate people more and more easily as time goes on, you either get one of two things. You're gonna continue to do this until you can't even supply yourself because, why should I have even a pair of shoes when someone else doesn't have a pair of shoes? And you could go to that extreme, or you become fatigued by this manipulation. You just shut down completely. So when you shut down completely, you just don't give. And we see a lot of people do that too. That's not how wise Christians should function. So how should we go about, let's say, doing world missions? How should we go about giving? How should we do this? It's by the conviction of the Holy Spirit, not by an outside conviction that a smooth talker would give you. I know that line is fine. And we're trying to figure out how to navigate through these kinds of waters, especially today when every level of emotional manipulation is out there, even in like politics. There is no question about it that from when you were a kid, politics has been, if you vote this other guy in, it's the ruin of our country. That's it, Until it actually is true. But by that time, people would have been fatigued, which is, I think, the point. Right? So voting someone in could actually be the end of our country. That's actually true. But you take it to these other extremes where, like, if you vote for Bush, it's the end of our country. If you vote for, Mitt Romney, it's the end of our country. I remember Joe Biden famously said he's going to put y'all back in chains when referring to Mitt Romney, because he was talking about how he's not for the freedom of black folk for some reason. And so you watch that, and people will be pushed to a certain belief system. What happens in that, I'm not just saying this is just from Democrats, Republicans would do the same thing. It's just when you get to that point, you'll just be fatigued to the point where you don't even want to think about it. You don't want to talk about it. I'm tired of talking about this. I don't want to consider it anymore. And you just stop caring. So that's the other side, which is really bad. Or you become that extremist where you're like, look, if Donald Trump gets voted in, we're literally voting Hitler in. I have to do whatever it takes to stop this man, this evil man from coming in, even if it means killing people or killing him. So we get some disturbed kid go on the roof, try to assassinate the former president. And so that's what happens. And then eventually people will become fatigued in that sense. They'll become tired of listening to stuff like this. I think that's the danger of budgets like this. When you continue to tell people, you're continuing to manipulate people. And when people start wising up to that, your only other avenue that you could take then is to get rid of those guys and get fresh blood to manipulate again. which this is why I don't like the whole emotional manipulation of giving. You don't emotionally manipulate people to give. You give with a cheerful heart. That's what the Bible says. So when you give, you should give with cheer. And you're like, well, I don't have a cheerful heart. I know I should give. Should I give anyway? Should I give reluctantly? The answer is no, because the Bible commands us to give with a cheerful heart. Yes, give, but give with the cheerful heart. And so I'm not saying don't give if you don't have a cheerful heart. Your heart is wrong. Fix the heart so that you could give cheerfully. But if you're emotionally being manipulated, you don't give with a cheerful heart. You give with guilt. And that's not how the Bible directs us to give. That's not how we should do our budgets. And we have an elder that's going to oversee the budget, and he listens to this podcast, and he should know that too, as well as the rest of our elders. When we make a budget, we don't do it with guilt. That's not how we make a budget. We do it with cheer. Even the budget that we have should be done with gratitude, with thanksgiving, knowing that it is the Lord that supplies, and we do it with that kind of attitude. So that's why when we do these things, it's into honor of the Lord. It's into the fear of the Lord. But when you do the guilt trip thing, that's not how things function. In fact, this is why so many people have become disenfranchised with the church, because they've been guilted and guilted and guilted. And then a scandal hits, a money scandal hits the church, everybody's out because they've been so tired already. They've been so tired into being manipulated into giving. And, I could give you some more examples, but it might hit too close to home. But let's say, for example, I'll try to keep this one broad. Let's say we need to do a building extension. And then you say something like, this is for the future of our church. This is for your children. You're not going to give for your children? Sam, this is for Adeline. This building extension is so that Adeline can have a good church experience in life. Mm-hmm. You're not going to give up something for that then? And if that's the case, then how far would you go? How much do you love Adeline? Do you love Adeline enough to take a second mortgage on your house? A third mortgage on your house? Would you go that far? And I'm telling you, people have done that. Yep. And this is what I disagree with. This is what I don't like. So when we give in the church, and it's not that I don't preach about giving in the church. People know that when it comes to giving, I preach on that in our church, which a lot of people find weird. They're like, why do you preach on that? Usually we get outside people to come in and say, you got to give to the pastor. You got to make sure he's okay. Because it's weird preaching about yourself. And I say, nah, because I'm the teacher here. If I can't talk about a subject, then I'm not qualified. But if I've been called to preach about a subject, and that means every part of the Bible, including how they should treat me, I should preach on it if it's biblical. Not my own thoughts, not my own feelings, not my own experiences, but what's biblical. And so what does the Bible say about giving to the pastor? What does the Bible say about, not muzzling the ox while it's treading the grain? What does the Bible say about stuff like that? What did Paul do with the Corinthians when another part was poor? And that's how you could preach about giving. So it's not just one thing. You don't preach with just one agenda in mind where you want to make sure everybody gives to the pastor or make sure everybody tithes. But you first preach about what the passage is talking about. And let's say in the context of giving, you give with a cheerful heart. And so I think that's what's been missing in that video. When you do the budget, people have been giving, and they gave with a cheerful heart. We budget with a cheerful heart. We budget in gratitude to the Lord. We honor the Lord. If you don't have that in your mind, it's like, well, I need to make sure. Well, let's say our finance deacon and elder, they're like, I need to make sure that I take this money that I've been given, and I got to make sure that every single penny is spent. That is, and then you have such a serious heart where there is no cheer in there. There's no gratitude in there. I think that's a problem too. I get it, that the heart of, honesty and integrity, it's there. That's necessary. But if you're missing the cheer, then you're missing a huge part of what God has commanded us to do. I think that's the problem.
So, but I'm wondering, what if someone were to say, and we actually talked about this, I think, towards the beginning of our podcast. What if someone were to say, well, how come your church, focuses on X, Y, and Z? How come you don't do more about missions? Missions. How come, you focus so much about the people in here rather than the people outside? Because it really seems like for some people, Christianity is about not so much what happens inside the church, but what you do outside of the church. And then a lot of churches will focus on global missions, going out to evangelize, going to the nations and spreading the gospel. How come we don't do that here? Because a budget would reflect that if that was our priority, right?
Yeah. I think when we initially did a budget, we set, this is before we became independent and I became the senior pastor, the leadership set that we would give a minimum of 50% to, let's say, missions. Mm-hmm. So our budget would reflect that. Of course, our budget was way smaller back then. So even when we went to like 3 places overseas, 50% would barely cover that. And so now we're a bigger ministry or a church, and 50% would be a very large sum. And there's a good book on, I think Nine Marks has a good book on church budgeting that I had our finance deacons and elders even look at. And, they even say in the beginning of your church, if you put 90% of your budget on staff, that's fine. In the beginning, stages of your church, because that's exactly what you need to get your foundation started. That's totally fine. And as your church develops and grows and matures, what you want to do is you want to have that budget reflected more toward the outside. It shows your growth and maturity. And so I think that's where we want to go. Honestly, that's where we want to go. Now, if I say that is the standard of we need at least 50%, I don't think it is a standard. I don't think there isn't anything in the Bible that says you need to have this much percentage go out. What we do is we do as much as we can, make sure our kids are fed, our family is well kept, and if the Lord gives us riches beyond what we need, we share it. That's what we do. I think that's the right spirit to have. I don't think people think like that necessarily, which is why, they and I would differ. So I say we take care of our house, we make sure we're fed. I'm not talking about extravagances, luxuries that we would want. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about we have our necessities, our needs, and if it's a little more, so be it. That's totally fine with me. I don't mind sound systems. I don't mind an AV unit, that kind of stuff. I don't mind air conditioning. I think those are great things to have. But if you're like, we should cut back on our HVAC, let's get rid of it so that we could give to missions, I think I have a problem with that. That's my point. And what we haven't gone over isn't simply the budget that's reflected. It's what you do with the budget. If you just give money away, that's one thing. If you're saying you're going to use money to, I don't know, let's go to Africa, and then what we'll do is we'll build a water pump there. And if that's the case, you build a water pump there and you just leave, then I have a problem with that too. Does that make sense too? So if you're going there to preach the gospel and you see, this is what you need after a long relationship with them, this is what they would want, then you do that for them. That's great. You help them build that water pump so that you don't have to put your name on it. Even better. That's the kind of attitude that I have when it comes to missions. So let's say this is how it translates to us. We have a missionary that we know that's in Cebu, in the Philippines. We ask him what he wants, and then we partner along. If he goes, we don't need anything except bodies. Just bring people here so that they could teach our kids. That's what we do. Yeah. If he goes, one year, we would love laptops. Our church, we would rally up and make sure that we could get as many laptops as we can and bring it over. And by the way, those are all things that we have done in the past. It's not because we're great. We didn't put in our CGS flag and, just kind of embroider every single thing that we give them or stamp every single laptop we give them with our CGS flag in it. That's not what we did. I don't think that's the point either. And so when it comes to missions, when people are like, you should do more missions, it's like, great. I'm glad you're here. That's what I say. I'm glad you're here to help us in this endeavor. Let's make sure we teach the word rightly, that we live according to the word of God, and that will lead us to missions because it naturally will. And so are we doing missions? Yeah. Could we do more? Of course. I don't think we should do less. Well, we obviously could do more. And to what extent? To however I would say the Lord allows us to. Mm-hmm. And let's say we have money left over and we don't have people to give. And I would say the number one thing isn't the money part. The number one thing is we develop relationships. We see where the need is. I was like, obviously there's need out there. Oh yeah, we know that there's need out there. All right, where? let me know. And speaking about us personally, people have told me you got to go to India. So a bunch of churches in our area went to India, the senior pastors, to see if they had a need, and they absolutely do. The churches there have a need, so partnering up with them would be great. We'll still keep our relationships with the people the missionaries that we know in Japan and the Philippines that we do, and obviously the Philippines missions will have a season as well as Japan. Sometimes they need more, sometimes they need less, right? But we want to most of all stand alongside them in every season.
Yeah.
And if we get to develop another relationship with another missionary, that's great. But that's kind of my philosophy. I don't go, there's a need in Africa, let's go. It's like, what? What does that even mean?
Yeah.
So if we go, I met this missionary and he's saying, we need some help here in Njombe in Tanzania, right? Mm-hmm. And then we go, okay, let's go. Let's go to Njombe. And in fact, we did for 2 years. We went to Njombe. We met the missionary there, see where we could help, and supply them with the needs that we could supply them with. And we actually had a very blessed time. In fact, I know now that a ton of tea is grown. One of their major exports is tea in Tanzania. And did you go to Njombe?
I wasn't there, no.
Okay. Should have gone.
I wanted to.
It was great.
Yeah, I think I was serving at that time elsewhere.
Yeah. Someone opened up kimchi inside one of the buses, the public buses.
Like someone on the team.
Yeah.
That's tough.
I'm not going to say who.
Who was it?
Someone opened up kimchi. And the guy in front of me looked like he was possessed with a demon having a seizure. He didn't know what the smell was. So he started like freaking out. What's that smell? He started looking around.
Yeah.
And then he started like shaking violently in his seat, like back and forth. And I thought the seat was going to break.
Wait, so
they do not like the smell of kimchi.
They don't have fermented food in Africa?
Africa's a continent. We were in a specific place
I know
in Tanzania called Njombe.
No, I know that, but I just thought
I have no idea.
Because it's a hot climate, so I thought they might ferment their food there.
Nah.
Interesting. Okay. So, going on to quickly a heresy section.
Heresy or not?
Heresy or not? And I'm not intentionally hating on this individual. I'm not. But it happened that I saw this week as well. And this is a video on David Platt talking about... No, but that's why I gave that little introduction. Video on David Platt talking about immigration.
What's wrong with you people?
It's a problem when Christians in the United States are the most resistant to refugees in our communities. Like, we believe Acts chapter 17, God orchestrates the movement of peoples among the nations that they might be found by him. And the way God has put in so many communities where we live, people from other places in the world, even from places specifically in the world that have little to no access to the gospel, where it's hard to get to those places, God's brought people from those places to our doorsteps, right outside where we live and where we work. So let's be intentional to love them with the love of Christ, to help them amidst all the challenges they're walking through, just as a picture of doing justice and loving mercy, loving our neighbors as ourselves. And as we do that, let's share the greatest news in the world with people from the nations that God has brought to our neighborhood.
First of all, I'd like to comment on the music. I almost raised my hands because oftentimes when this type of music come on, my hands go up.
No, they don't. You don't raise your hands.
I was just talking because the music is like very like, when you're like the last night of retreat and you're playing, what is it called? C sharp. I
don't think C sharp is played at retreats that
G.
often.
The G. When the chord is being played and then when the hands go up, you know what I'm talking about.
That was more like an A, but sure.
Oh, is that the holiest of the chords? Please don't say the Jesus. So this video is interesting, and we had discussed immigration last week, and David Platt, the way that he explains the immigration issue, well, I guess he doesn't really dive into the issue itself, but he talks about the fact that we should be sharing the gospel with the people in our area. True. But he almost makes it seem like this illegal immigration wave, God orchestrated illegal immigration for people to come to our doorstep. Maybe his whole point was because we're refusing to go. I don't know. I didn't see the whole clip. But God has brought the people here. So if they're here, our job is to preach the gospel to him. While I agree that our job is to preach the gospel to those who are in our area, it almost makes it seem like God is orchestrating this big thing where people are coming into our country illegally. Any thoughts on this? I don't want to hate on the man. I'm not. That's not my intention. But it just came up, especially because we're talking about.
Yeah.
No, especially
not your
because
intent, but there's two extremes. I think we need to discern between, and this is why it's so difficult in this day and age. I tend to agree with John MacArthur when he said, "It's not that judgment will come upon us. I think judgment is on us right now." That's what John MacArthur says. People are like, you're a little bit much. J-Mac is a little bit much, right? But I can't help but to think there is some truth to that statement that we should at least listen to. Here are the two extremes. So one extreme is we should just get rid of everybody. We should just be mean to every single immigrant out there. We should set up, prison camps again, and just put any kind of non-American in there. I don't even know what that means. That's why they had Japanese internment camps, because during World War II, we didn't know who was Japanese, so you couldn't trust anybody. And that was a very, very shaky time in the States, right? During any of the world wars, really. But here's the other extreme, though. The other extreme is we just open our borders to anybody, and we should accept them as Christians. Forget about politics. As Christians, we should just receive everybody and see that this is an opportunity to preach the gospel.
Yeah.
Again, that kind of reductive, non-discerning attitude is what we want to warn against. This is not what we want. We don't want that kind of attitude to be pervasive in the church. We want our church to be wise. We want it to be not just simply wise, but wise as serpent. Not just innocent, but innocent as doves. If you're going to be the extreme in wisdom. Not in your platitudes, but not in your platitudes or in your positions. Those are not the extremes that we're talking about. We're talking about in wisdom. So there are times to temper. There are times to take a more a side that's considered extreme, but all that is through wisdom. And so when you say, "Oh, this is about preaching the gospel, making sure that we could do that to our neighbors," oh yeah, absolutely. But does it mean we should open our doors? Then, just as David Platt has not, he should be personally opening up his doors, which he has not, to house as many immigrants, illegal immigrants, I might add, as possible. If not, what is he really saying? He's saying, you guys do the work, because there's a gospel issue. And when I'm here, my job is to tell you to do the work, right? My job isn't to actually do the work. And so, that's one of the things that, we have to always be careful about, especially as preachers. You could preach a certain thing and your life might not follow that. And then you have to take very good care in making sure that you're not condemning yourself by preaching something and not doing it.
Right.
So I wouldn't necessarily take his stance. I know you're not trying to hate, rather.
No.
First of all, I don't trust.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to load the next video.
Yeah, but it's fine. But yeah, I just think it's an unwise kind of statement that he's putting out there. It shows his youth. And he can't get away from that emotional manipulation. That music is completely unnecessary. What are we supposed to feel bad for, illegal immigrants because they don't have the gospel? Like, I could do that for anything then. I'll do that for your friends. What about your friends? Put the music on. Let me talk about the friends that you never talk to about Jesus anymore.
So I do have a question about that, about the emotional aspect of things, because I think it was maybe 6 years ago that we went to TGC. Was that 6 years ago? 2019 was 5 years ago. We went to TGC, and I remember David Platt spoke at one of the plenary sessions there.
And
And
you need to like to just you need him like in your ear.
I need him in my life.
Yeah.
I need him.
He's just giving you what to say.
Yeah. So plenary sessions. And I remember that session being extremely powerful, and a lot of people saying that about that particular session, that it was really, really powerful. It was very moving. It was very convicting. And I still remember he would share stories about how he was going on missions and the importance of missions and stuff like that. And so this has been his thing for a long time. And I remember when he was preaching, he had this emotion, and it was like he was pleading with you, kind of like Paul Washer does. He was pleading with you to see the world as it is. Don't be stuck in your little bubble. Like, there are hundreds of millions of people out there that don't know the gospel, that need to hear the gospel, and you need to go and preach the gospel.
Yeah.
So
It's not wrong.
right. It's not wrong.
I think it's great that there is someone that does it. I just disagree on priority. This is where people, like, you continue to say, people are like, oh, where's your mission? Where's your missions? It's like, it's important. It's obviously important.
Yeah,
Obviously, it's a high priority. Well, let's put it in its right place, though. 1 Corinthians, let's say Paul is writing a letter to the church in Corinth. Does he talk about missions first? Does he talk about giving first? He talks about giving. Where does he talk about that? In the last chapter. In the last chapter, he talks about giving. He talks about, grabbing all what they collect in the first day of the week and giving it out. In chapter 15, I believe, right? 16. He talks about that in the end. What does he talk about in the beginning, though? He talks about your life. He talks about the church. He talks about what you're doing wrong. He talks about that kind of sin. So, look, I haven't been to David Platt's church. I don't know what he preaches on. I just know that when he's outside, he only talks about chapter 16. I'm saying you need to talk about chapters 1 to 15 first. Then you could get to 16. I'm not saying don't talk about 16. Get to 16 when it's necessary. And make sure you get to 16. But it can't be the only thing that you talk about. And when you talk about it, he doesn't pull any heartstrings with music. He doesn't have tears in his eyes, because it's a letter. You wouldn't have been able to see it. But he doesn't do it with any kind of emotional manipulation. He's like, this is something that you like to do. I love that. Continue to do it. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's more of an encouragement when it's about giving. And so, I hope that that's the case. And I hope that that's where people will go when we talk about, let's say, for instance, giving.
I mean, the music thing, though, I don't know if he did that, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that could have been his team, but...
Yeah. But it seems like it's a common theme for all his videos. For any video, really. You got to put music behind it.
Hans
I
Zimmer.
hope that when Brian takes clips from our podcast and puts it in the internet,
Hans Zimmer.
there's some good music behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll put in some
Hans Zimmer.
put in some house.
House? Like Bad Bunny? Is that house?
I don't know.
There's a dance...
You are a dancer, Sam.
No, there's a funny... Anyway, on a more light... on a more lighthearted note, you suggested, and I thought this was a great idea, that we do a meme of the week. And a meme of the week section. I don't know if we need like a little beat, like I don't know what we need, but we
Until the
have...
beat comes, you'll do a little beatbox.
Anyway, we have a meme of the week, and I thought it'd be great for us to start off with the man Theo Vaughn, King Theo, as they say. And we just play for a little bit. It's like a longer clip, a little inappropriate towards the end, so we'll just play at the beginning.
First of all, I don't trust a man that wears shorts to church. So I don't care. I don't know if jorts, I don't even know what it is. Jesus shorts or whatever, shorts for Jesus, whatever. You know what I'm saying? You wear pants to go see the Lord, son. If I see a man in shorts in church, dude, I'm calling the police. I'll report his license plate.
Okay, so speaking of fear of the Lord, we were talking about that before. A lot of times, there are very specific ways that we dress to go to church. We did talk about this a long time ago. And, during the summer, it gets hot. Are shorts inappropriate for church? Theo might have a point. I don't know. He might have a point here. Jorts, I think, are never okay. But he might have a point. For men, if you're a man,
Call them
and you wear
Jesus shorts.
yeah, a man in jorts is tough. Is really tough.
I think I've seen Brian in jorts.
No. I don't think he would ever do that. No, he doesn't. No, he would never. Cargo shorts are fine.
What about Pastor Paul? Would he ever wear jorts?
No, if Pastor, I would scream at the top of my lungs if Pastor Paul ever wore jorts. But
Who would wear jorts in our church?
No, so I mean, the reason why I asked is that it's funny, but it does have to do with something that we talked about earlier today about fear of the Lord. Because I think the way that we dress, the way that we represent and present ourselves is in relation to the context that we are in, where we are going to, the environment that we're going into, right? So, but is it going too far to say that people should not wear shorts in church? Is that going too far? Or is that, I don't know. How do you think about dress code at church? A little fun little topic.
Is it fun?
Yeah, jorts are a no-go.
Well, I
for
wanted
me.
the meme of the week. MOTW.
MOTW. Motto.
Our meme of the week to kind of be more on the lighter side.
This is light.
Yeah. So I think it's funny because it's true. You don't want some dude coming in with shorts on Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you see that kind of person, you don't trust them. I don't trust you. I don't trust
Wait,
you, Phyllis.
why you?
I don't trust you
Wait,
with
why
these
would
shorts.
you-
Why are you coming in with shorts to worship God?
Wait,
Wear some long pants. I think the next on the list is sweatpants. Sweatpants is right above shorts. It's better than shorts, but
Yeah.
I don't trust you either, Phyllis.
On Sunday?
Yeah.
No, sweatpants on Sunday is a heinous crime.
Ash
What's
Wednesday.
Ash Wednesday?
Sweatpants on Ash Wednesday might be more heinous
So, okay.
because this is a time where you have to think about,
Yes.
oh, this is about Jesus Christ's suffering and passion.
Okay,
So
so
let me wear sweatpants. What goes through your mind
No, so I understand
when
that.
you
So-
put on sweatpants? When you put that first leg in, are you like, dang it, this is suffering, isn't it?
So I think a lot of people have been bringing this up to me for the past like 4 years because I wore sweatpants.
Has it only been 4 years?
Yeah. For actually no, it's been like 4, yeah. Because I wore sweatpants to Ash Wednesday service when I first came here. And so I've told everyone this response, but I didn't know, like, so for me,
What did I make you do?
what did you make me do?
What did I make you do?
Wear pants.
Yeah.
No, but what I'm saying is, at the time, I thought the vibe was an AMP type of vibe. And so AMP, people can wear sweatpants.
In case you don't know what AMP is.
AM prayer. It's our morning prayer on Saturdays that everyone comes to. Sometimes people may be wearing sweatpants. And so I thought it was like that type of, oh, come as you are comfortably and reflect, that kind of thing. But I was wrong. So
You're the only person that thought that.
I wore a suit, I think, in years following. So
I made you wear someone's jeans. That's what I did.
So the issue so I had to change during the middle of the service because I realized I had to go out for communion. So what was the worst was these jeans did not fit me in the slightest. They were very large. And it's not like I was wearing, oh, you know what it was? Then I went to go wear a suit shirt.
No, I gave you a blazer and a shirt.
Yeah. So it turned out okay. But it wasn't shorts though.
Yeah, shorts is, I don't trust you. I don't trust you, Phyllis.
But why? What is it about men wearing shorts that's not a good thing?
I think people, I don't want to go too deep on
not that-
a very, very light topic that we go.
Deep topic.
But I think Theo Von said it, and that was good enough, to be honest. You call the cops and you give them their license plate number. Like this man's wearing shorts to Sunday. This guy's got to go to jail, man.
But I mean, I thought that was funny. Yeah, and partially true. Yeah. So, I mean, dang, watching no one wear shorts anymore on Sunday.
People wear shorts on Sunday? I don't even know. I don't think so. Maybe not. Maybe to another church.
But yeah, I think, shorts are cool at a pool to cool off in athletic events.
Is shorts appropriate anywhere else besides a pool?
Athletic events, like a gym.
If you're at the gym. But what if you're participating by spectating, not by playing?
I think once it reaches like a hefty 85 degrees and plus, I think you have to wear shorts unless you just want to sweat through everything
But
that you're
you're
wearing.
inside a stadium. Let's say you're going to watch the Celtics or the Knicks. Would you wear shorts to the stadium?
Probably.
Is it appropriate?
I think so. I don't think men should wear open-toed shoes though ever without socks. Like I don't think I should ever see a man's toes.
Pastor Paul wears open-toe sandals. Is that why you mentioned it?
I didn't know that.
I love this very light part of this show and episode. I could continue to keep it light.
No, but open-toed shoes is tough though because I don't want to see everyone's cuticles or whatever they're called.
Well, I mean, nails, but sure.
Yeah, I don't want to see everyone's nails.
Toenails.
So what do you think is an inappropriate way of... Okay, are crop tops ever okay for men? No. This is real. So, okay, now we've opened this can of worms. Okay, so athletes these days are doing nail polish in their hands.
What if this section is longer than our Ecclesiastes?
No, it's shan't.
Okay.
Is it okay for men to wear nail polish, do you think? But it's like painted, different colors. So if you know Noah Lyles, the famous U.S. sprinter, he does that. DK Metcalf, jacked out of his mind, maybe like top 1% in the world in jackedness, has nail polish, also wears crop tops. They're doing this weird thing where they're like super masculine looking, but they have little feminine details.
Yeah.
Is that okay? That's kind of weird to me.
You want me to give you my real take on
Yes.
it? Okay. I think from the 80s, we've gone to a hyper masculinity, which isn't true masculinity. Rambo, so Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah.
And we had Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
We had all these really jack guys out of their mind.
Yeah. Steroid use.
And from the 80s that happened. You look at the 70s, the movies there, like really masculine men weren't jacked.
No, skinny.
They were like healthy.
Right, fit.
You would say skinny now. No, I'm saying people consider them skinny now, but at the time they had broad shoulders. They were strong. They were still fit. They
Who would make it in the 70s here?
All right, Brian. Back in the 70s, I don't know if Asians could have survived, to be honest. My mom grew up here in the 70s.
Oh, true.
And then, they would always ask her, "Are you Chinese?" She's like, "No." "Are you Japanese?" She said, "No." "Then what are you?" "Korean?" So what's that? So people didn't even know what Korean was in the 70s.
Yeah.
Anyway. But yeah. So because of the hypermasculinity, we don't know what masculine is. So throughout the ages, men had this type of masculinity. Now we have, I think, a more... I think people might use the word evolved, but I would say it's more twisted now. And so we've twisted what true strength and masculinity is.
Yeah.
I think a lot of men think it's low body fat percentage, so they try to get to like 8 because that looks really good.
8 is...
And I don't know if that's necessarily
8 is
good.
hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's necessarily good. I think there are times where you could be 8 and healthy if you're like competing. Let's say you're a featherweight. Maybe an 8 is good, but you're a heavyweight, 8 is not good.
No.
You want to gain that mass. So it's not universally the case.
Yeah.
But, now we've gone to a point where we don't know what masculinity is. So look at all these guys now. So I think from the 80s, we have continued to devolve from what masculinity was and should be into now. We keep the jacked, but we keep all these other elements that's more feminine, like crop tops where have always been feminine. Nail polish has always been feminine. So we're adapting these things because we just don't know what masculinity is. And so that's why we're doing the things that we're doing.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
So is it like... It's weird for me.
Yeah, it should be weird. That's what girls did. Why are you doing it?
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Look, if you're a dude that wears nail polish because you need to strengthen your nails and stuff, and that's the excuse that I've heard, eat good food and strengthen your nails. Eat like biotin.
Oh,
and stuff like that.
biotin.
Yeah. And then strengthen your nails naturally, like a real man.
Yeah. Like a real man. And don't wear shorts or jorts ever.
When are jorts ever appropriate?
I think jorts are appropriate until the age of 4. After
Then they're never appropriate.
No, I can't think of a single scenario, even if it's for like a party that you go to where everyone wears like denim or whatever, even for like fun.
I think shorts are a big thing in the United States. Everywhere else in the world, no matter how hot it is, they wear pants.
Yeah.
I went to Egypt. It was like 100 degrees. They all wore slacks and like khakis.
That's like protection from the sun, though.
No one wore shorts. And they all wear long sleeve shirts. No one wears short sleeve shirts. Only people in the States did. Which is kind of interesting.
It is interesting. So, I mean,
And they wore jackets too.
I love shorts, but
It's like homeware. You get to wear homeware outside.
yeah, because athleisure is a big thing right now.
Yeah, you should look at our session meeting.
I think that's why.
Yeah, when the elders come together, some of them wear tank tops.
No, them toes is out. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, thank you for that, Pastor Eugene. You know, this meme of the week might really make this lively. Thank you for that idea. And we thank you for listening to this episode of the Dear Church podcast. Join us next week as we discuss, you guessed it. We hope and pray that this has been a blessing in your ears. Fight the good fight, finish the race, keep the faith. Peace.